From summer tourism to protecting the island for years to come, I talk one-on-one with Kiawah Island Mayor Brad Belt for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Kiawah Island Mayor Brad Belt, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me, Quintin. Pleasure to be with you.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, there's so much going on right now. And of course, you all are busy on Kiawah Island because it's summer right now. So tell me, Mayor, what's new? What's now on Kiawah
Island? What's old is new, and what's new is old. Obviously, as you noted, we've started our summer season. That's when our population swells fairly dramatically, as is the case with many coastal communities. Our full-time resident population is just over 2,000 people. Our daily overnight population during the summer is typically 10 to 12,000 people, certainly on peak holiday weeks and weekends. And so that brings extraordinary opportunity. It contributes to the success of our tourism-based economy, but it also brings challenges. We've got to obviously manage for the additional pressures on our roads and infrastructure. And that's something that, we've got to keep our eye on the ball and continually manage. Kiawah Island, like many other communities, we have to also be prepared for the beginning of hurricane season. So this last week was the beginning of the hurricane season. So emergency preparedness during this period of time is also a critically important issue.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I want to talk to you about that in just a second, Mayor. But you talk about, obviously, that tourism-based economy. What is the biggest difference about that from 2023 to right now?
There actually hasn't been that much difference. Kiawah Island is fairly well built out or developed. So there has not been a significant amount of growth in the number of tourists that come to Kiawah Island because we haven't added any hotel rooms during the last few years. We haven't really added much in our short-term rental program. Where there has been a difference, interestingly enough, is with regard to our part-time property owners and homeowners. This is a second home. This is a vacation home for a majority of our property owners. What we've discerned, and we don't have hard data on this, but certainly anecdotal data, is that over the course of the past few years, part-time property owners are spending relatively more time here than they used to do so. That was in part pandemically driven, and that's been sustained. So as a result of that, even though our overall tourism overnight paid accommodations visitor base hasn't grown significantly, the overall number of people on the island at any given point in time has grown. So again, that's resulted in traffic congestion related issues during peak times, challenges like getting dinner reservations and tea times. So those are first world problems, but nonetheless, you want to make sure it's a high quality of life experience for both our residents, our part-time property owners, as well as our tourist visitors.
So let me ask you this, Mayor. Well, how many part-time property owners do you have right now on the island?
There are about 4,400 front doors, basically, on Kiawah Island. And so only about 1,000 of those are just a little over 1,000 are full-time residents. So that leaves 3,400 plus or minus that are either part-time property owners or investor-owned properties who simply rent out their property. So again, it's a significant majority of our property owner base are part-time rather than full-time.
And you talk about that short-term rental program. Obviously, you have part-time property owners and, of course, full-time residents. What do you want to tweak with that right now?
A great question, Quintin, and that's something we've got to continue to look at as a policy matter. We have a world-class resort on Kiawah Island, the Kiawah Island Golf Resort, with the five-star sanctuary hotel, the world-renowned ocean course and other courses, a top-ranked tennis facility, etc. It, its success is the island's success, and its success is critical to the quality of life for all residents, because residents and both full-time as well as part-time, play on the golf courses and eat at the resort restaurants as well as other activities. But we have to evaluate kind of what is the right level of tourism for Kiawah Island, given our inability to add much infrastructure, particularly roads infrastructure. There's really not much land left on Kiawah Island or within the town to add additional amenities. The question becomes, can we really afford continued growth in the number of tourists? What we'd like to focus on, I think, collectively, is enhancing the experience for the tourists to come here, not necessarily increasing the number of tourists, but perhaps the amount of time that they actually spend when they're here, and the amount of dollars, quite frankly, that they spend while they're here. We want to make sure you have a high quality product so that short-term rentals and hotels can charge higher rates. And that the visitors spend more money at our restaurants, on recreational activities, and those kinds of things, rather than just attracting a greater number of tourists. And that's going to be a difficult balancing act to manage from a public policy perspective.
Well, let me ask you this, Mayor. What is the average amount of money that a tourist spends on Kiawah Island?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have that data on the top of my head. I know that the Charleston Visitor Bureau does put out numbers regarding the average spend per visitor in the Charleston area. And don't hold me to this. I believe it's around $1,000 in the Charleston area. I don't know kind of if that's Kiawah specific. I believe the average daily rate for accommodations is in the range of $400 to $500, but I don't have that data right in front of me.
No, at all. So let me ask you this, Mayor. With that type of money, these tourists, excuse me for the bugs here, are actually spending on Kiawah and really across the Low Country, what amenities can you help? Can you all bring to the island to attract more visitors?
So yeah, another great question. So the primary amenity is, of course, our beach. Kiawah Island is blessed with a 10-mile long strip of beautiful sand, fairly pristine, characterized by fairly modest level of development along the beach, certainly in contrast to certain other larger coastal cities or communities. That's part of its attraction. Beachwalker County Park, which is publicly accessible, is typically ranked by Dr. Beach and others as one of the top 10 beaches in the United States. So our beach is our primary attraction, but there are a lot of beautiful beaches up and down the Atlantic seaboard as well as the South Carolina coast. So it's got to be something more than that. Our golf courses are part of that, as I know, and particularly the renowned Ocean Course, which has been the host of the PGA Championship and will be again in 2031. But obviously, there are also other coastal communities that have beaches and golf. So again, it needs to be something more than that. My view is what makes Kiawah truly unique and attractive to a certain type of resident and part-time property owner as well as visitor is its extraordinary natural beauty and critical maritime ecosystem. It's the flora and fauna. It's the fact that we are home to an extraordinarily diverse array of interesting species. Our beloved native bobcats, migratory shorebirds that stop over on Kiawah Island on their 17 or 19,000 mile annual journey. For example, the red knots. piping plovers, oyster catchers, whimbrels, and others. It is right now, it's nesting season for loggerhead sea turtles. And our Turtle Patrol program just this morning announced that they found their 100th nest. And so, and they've been, loggerhead sea turtles been nesting on Kiawah Island for literally millennia. And it's extraordinarily fascinating. Go out early in the morning and see these magnificent creatures crawling up the sand, digging their nest and laying their eggs. And then at the end of the season, when they hatch, those little hatchlings crawling out and going back in the ocean, the cycle begins all over again. We have our Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, which are somewhat unique here on Kiawah because they engage in activity known as strand feeding, which is very unusual, only happens a few places around the world. So it is that combination of activities and the absence of real commercialization that I think is what distinguishes Kiawah Island from other coastal communities. It simply provides a different vacation or visitor experience than other places do. And I think that's what we would like to emphasize going forward. Not, it's a little glib to talk about ecotourism, but focus on tourist activities that really embrace the natural environment that is Kiawah Island.
Trending wise, Mayor, what are those tourist activities from an ecosystem standpoint do you or that you and your team are keeping an eye on that eventually in the next 5 to 10 years you want to bring to Kiawah Island?
Good question. There are some specific things. What I will note is the resort itself has nature tours and environmental program. The town doesn't sponsor those itself. It's kind of not our role, but we want to make sure that that anything that we permit is conducive with that. We've just recently entered into our first commercial beach operations agreement with Coastal Expeditions, which is a leading eco tour provider and educational focused, natural environment education focused tour operator. So that's something we want to encourage and facilitate. We want to continue to maintain our leisure trail system. So it's very accessible to all our residents and visitors and allows people to explore the island on foot or by bicycle. Then we also want to make sure that we are putting in place appropriate policies, particularly as we get to the end stage of primary development in the island and then begin the process of redevelopment, that our land use policies and are conducive to preserving and protecting what is unique and special about our environment. For example, the town council just this past last month approved a new beach management ordinance, really designed intended to protect our beach and dune system, to give us the greatest set of tools in order to do that. We're looking at things like requiring new driveways and parking lots to be pervious surface, so we deal with stormwater management. We have a very ambitious marsh management plan that we're looking to expand, and there's a number of different things we can implement. We want to maintain the urban growth boundary with Charleston County and Seabrook and Charleston City so that we can better manage growth around the island and in the island's watershed. And we may want to look at entering into or adopting a new Kiawah River watershed management plan. So there's a wide range of things, some of which are in progress or we put in place, others that we're continuing to look at, Quintin.
Yes, sir. I hope to get you back on Quintin's close-ups later in the year so we can talk more about that in depth. I wish I had more time, but I'm running out of time, unfortunately. But let me ask you quickly, that redevelopment on Kiawah Island, where can you redevelop right now?
There's only a handful of parcels that are, some single family parcels, single family home parcels. There are only a couple of of parcels that lend themselves to additional commercial or multifamily development, including some owned by the resort, some owned by the master developer, but not much of those. So going forward, we've got to figure out how best to encourage responsible redevelopment of some of our more aged housing stock, particularly the villas, cottages, the multi-family properties. Because some of those were built, 40 years ago, as much as 40 years ago, and those need to be not just maintained, but at some point replaced. And that always presents challenges because you've got multiple ownership of those types of properties. So again, looking at both carrots and sticks, as it were, from a public policy standpoint, an ordinance standpoint, to encourage that responsible and critically important and necessary redevelopment going forward.
Where else on the island can you rehab most of those particular properties that you just mentioned?
Most of those, the island is kind of divided almost in half or a third. The western third of the island is where you have the highest level of density, and that's what was developed first, and that's where you have more multifamily properties. As you go further east on the island, kind of the latter 2/3, it's all single family properties and somewhat larger lots and more open space. So most of the development is going to occur on the western end of the island. Again, there are going to be multiple players in that process. The town is what it is. It's Kiawah Island itself, as well as the town owns, or what the town doesn't own, but within the town's jurisdiction is Freshfields Village, which is actually not on Kiawah Island. It's actually on Seabrook Island, in the town's municipal center, where our office is, where I'm speaking to you from, is actually across the Haulover Creek and is actually on Johns Island, but that's just 21 acres here. So the totality of the town of Kiawah Island is just the Kiawah Island, and then a few dozen acres outside of the island proper itself. I don't see that changing. There are always municipalities consider things like annexation, and that's, you talked about our comprehensive plan and things like whether in fact we want to consider annexation of properties is part of a more strategic look at the future of Kiawah Island. I think what I've gleaned from our planning commission, and I think our council members, is the town, in contrast to many other municipalities, isn't looking to grow. We don't really think we need to grow. But at the same time, if there's opportunities to better acquire properties that would have the effect of protecting our natural environment, to protect against additional commercial development or additional activities that would put additional pressures on our roads or amenities or contribute to greater pollution of the Kiawah River watershed and shellfish habitat. Those are the kinds of things I think we should continue to be looking at.
This might be not a good question, Mayor, but would you be in favor of vertical growth?
I personally would not. I suspect that would not be looked at very favorably by most of our community. We had a more recent multifamily commercial generated development that went a little bit higher than has been characterized by most multifamily development on Kiawah Island. And I think people look at that and have said, that's not Kiawah Island. So I think, if anything, the future land use planning would suggest going the other direction, encourage lower development, less vertical development. We'll have to see how that plays out. I would just note that in many respects, Kiawah is like Sanibel Island down off the coast of Florida in the Gulf Coast. I think they have a restriction. There's no building higher than 3 stories, and they consider themselves a natural sanctuary. We've gone to 4 or 5 stories in certain limited areas, and I think, again, most people would take a look at have seen that built out and say, gee, that's just not what Kiawah is all about.
I understand that. And I hope to get you back on for that. Talk more about that and the watershed plan and in the urban growth boundary as well. But in between all of this, Mayor, lastly, beach rear nourishment, that is, where does that fit into this plan for the future of Kiawah?
So Kiawah is blessed in so many respects. One of the ways in which we are blessed is, again, in contrast to some of other coastal communities, we have had largely an accreting beach. So we have not had to invest in substantial beach renourishment projects in the past. There have been some that have been more strategic than anything else to deal with issues that have risen on the east end of the island, just natural forces that have risked encroachment of the ocean onto the ocean course, for example. And so the town has partnered with the resort in two prior beach. It's less renourishment than beach management projects down at the eastern end of the island. There's another one that is in the process of being permitted. Whether it's going to end up being necessary or not remains to be seen. Again, that's very natural dynamic forces and things change from year to year. On the western end of the island, around Sam Spit, which is extraordinary piece of the island that is critical habitat for a wide range of species and is undeveloped. There's been in the past some projects to manage the flow of the Kiawah River into the Atlantic Ocean and have involved recutting that inlet. Again, that's something that's under consideration once again, whether in fact we do that or not remains to be seen. But we get a regular report, and we just got an updated report yesterday from the town's consultant, Coastal Sciences and Engineering, on the health of our beach and dune system, and it is quite healthy. There are always areas which we need to monitor, but as of now, fortunately, we don't have any major beach renourishment projects that are anticipated. Obviously, a major storm could change that virtually overnight.
Let's pray to God in heaven that does not happen as far as storms or hurricanes not coming here. But going back to Sam Spit quickly, I know the rain's coming, but where should that flow go, and where else in that area can you recut?
It would just be there's a little kind of area between Kiawah Island and Seabrook Island where the sands kind of migrate and shift, and it's just in that area where over the past you've tended to move the inlet back towards Kiawah Island, cutting into what is Sam Spit right now. Again, there are a lot of factors and considerations involved in that, and that's all very preliminary at this stage. But that's a type of project's been done 2 or 3 times in the past 20 or 30 years. And it may be appropriate to do that again. Obviously, you want to ensure that there are no negative impacts on the town of Seabrook Island or the town of Kiawah Island and its interest, but more importantly, there's no negative impact on critical habitat. And so, that's an evaluation process, and you get a lot of experts, and I'm certainly not one. So I'm informed by those who are, and then ultimately we'll make the decision which is best for the broader Kiawah Island community.
So where else do you want to, well, let me ask you this, Mayor. 2026 is coming up quickly. What beach management projects do you see coming online for you all?
We don't, other than the one that I just mentioned towards the east end of the island, where around the ocean course, where we have the potential to do I think would be a fairly modestly scaled beach management project. There isn't anything else that I would expect in 2026. There are a couple of undeveloped parcels along the beachfront. One of which was the site of the former Kiawah Island Inn, owned by the Kiawah Island Golf Resort. and I know there's an interest on the part of the resort and in its ownership, the Goodwin family, to redevelop that property. And so we'll have to have a conversation about exactly what that entails. And that process could certainly begin in 2026. And so stay tuned on that one.
Oh, yes, I hope to get you back on to talk about that. But quickly, Mayor, is there any public access to the beach on Kiawah other than the county park?
The only direct landward access is on through Beachwalker County Park. Of course, as is the case with all South Carolina beaches, the areas from the mean high tide line seaward are owned by the state and held in public trust. So they are accessible to any member of the public has access to those beaches. For example, on the far eastern end of the island, an area known as Sandy Point Beach, which is really faces more towards Folly Beach and the Edisto River, that's regularly visited on summer weekends by dozens of boats that will beach there and explore that area. You can't get to that by land. There's not only is there no public access, there's no access by land for the rest of Kiawah Island residents because it's the marshes intercede. But that area is public beach, and so public does get access to that. But again, landward, the access to Kiawah Island's beach is through Beachwalker County Park. I'm personally committed, and I believe our council is committed to protecting and preserving that public access to Kiawah's beaches. And once you're on the beach, I mean, County Park is limited in its area, but we certainly have visitors that come through Beachwalker County Park, go all the way down to the end of Sam Spit, which is about a mile watch the strand feeding dolphins. They can walk the 10 miles of the beach if they want to do so. I suspect most don't. They just want to hang out, and but that's where we have public access.
Oh, and quickly going back to obviously the beach management plan. Now, from my research, Mayor, I understand. You can tell me if this is correct or not. Hasn't the Kiawah Island, the town of Kiawah, haven't the town last time the town updated its local comprehensive beach plan was in 2012?
I can't remember. We've updated the beach management plan subsequent there to, I believe, Quintin. This was not a rewrite of our comprehensive beach management plan, being to be consistent with the State Beach Management Act. What we did was a comprehensive rewrite of the beach management ordinance, which incorporates many elements of the beach management plan, not all of them, but it was to better the principal purpose of the rewrite of our ordinance was to provide some greater clarity and address some inconsistencies in the prior ordinance with regard to the town's jurisdiction and its ability to manage development in our beach and dune system as we've now defined that. It was kind of ill-defined previously, and it was driven primarily off the previously OCRM, but now BCM jurisdictional lines, which are still critically important, but there are other public interests where the town has responsibility for public health, safety, and welfare of its citizens that may go beyond what the state has defined as its interest with regard to the Beach Management Act. And that's part of what the Beach Management Ordinance rewrite was all about.
I hope to continue this conversation with you later this year if I can. But for now, Kiawah Island Mayor Brad Belt, thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Okay. Thank you very much, Quintin. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Likewise.